That morning, Anna awoke with an absolute sense of happiness. The gentle sunlight streamed through the curtains, casting shimmering streaks over her gleaming golden hair like threads of pure gold. Everything around her seemed imbued with new life. From the chirping of birds outside the window to the rich aroma of freshly brewed coffee wafting from the small kitchen, she smiled softly, immersed in the tenderest of emotions. All those feelings sprang from the moment when Daniel knelt before her, his hand trembling and his voice overflowing with emotion as he revealed a small box containing a dazzling diamond ring. His eyes in that moment were sincere and earnest, stirring Anna's heart with an intensity unlike anything she had ever known. He declared his love for her, professed that he could not envision a life without her, and vowed to spend the rest of his days by her side. His words still echoed in Anna's mind as if they had just been spoken. Anna burst into tears of overwhelming emotion, hot tears streaming down her cheeks as she nodded in acceptance of Daniel's proposal. She embraced him, holding him so tightly that she could feel every rapid beat of his heart resonating in his chest. In that moment, Anna truly believed that all the long days of waiting, hope, and love had finally been repaid. But that happiness, it turned out, was nothing more than a cruel jest. Only a few hours later, as Anna still reveled in sweet dreams of a future wedding, her mind adrift with visions of a splendid wedding gown and the plans for a grand celebration, a phone rang. A brief text message, yet potent enough to shatter the peaceful world she had so carefully built. Congratulations on the wedding of Daniel and Sophia. The ceremony will take place tonight. Just those few succinct lines made Anna's heart skip a beat. Her hands turned icy and trembled as she clutched her phone. She gazed at the screen as if it were something unreal, as though with a mere blink it might vanish. Yet the message remained, clear and cold. Anna read and reread each word, each phrase like a tiny dagger plunging deep into her heart. She searched for a sign, for any hint that this might be a cruel joke. But there was none. Daniel's name shone unmistakably, and the name of the bride was equally unambiguous. Sophia, the woman whom Daniel had once claimed was merely a friend, a close colleague, nothing more. Daniel, the man who only moments before had proposed to her, the man who had promised to stand by her forever, was now preparing to marry another woman that very evening. Anna felt as if the world around her had plunged into darkness. She sank into the nearest chair, her body drained of every bit of strength. Everything became blurred, and chaos reigned in her mind. The sweet memories of Daniel intertwined with images of his wedding to Sophia, leaving her submerged in an inescapable nightmare. Why had Daniel done this to her? Why would he so callously toy with her feelings? He had professed his love, had declared that he could not live without her. So why then did he now shatter her heart into countless fragments? Anna tried to stand, but her feeble legs could not support her weight. She sat back down, tears streaming down her cheeks like cold, unyielding stones falling into her trembling hands. Never before had she felt such agony. Never before had she felt such profound betrayal. The deepest sorrow was not merely that Daniel would wed Sophia, but that he had proposed to her just hours before his own wedding to another woman. It was an immense insult, a cruelty beyond imagination. Anna realized that all she had believed in, all she had built up, was now nothing but a bitter farce. She picked up her phone once more, her eyes vacant as they stared at the screen. The message remained there, cold and unyielding, like a sentence passed upon her heart. Anna wondered what she should do next. Should she confront Daniel and Sophia, demand an explanation for their actions? Or should she remain silent, bearing this sorrow alone? But first, she had to breathe, to summon the remaining strength within her to face this harsh truth. Anna closed her eyes, trying to soothe her bleeding heart, seeking any reason to continue fighting. The happiness she once thought was hers had now become the cruelest joke that fate had ever played upon her. Anna called him. The phone's ring echoed in elongated bursts, resonating steadily in the quiet stillness of her small room. Her heart pounded, each ring a knife's thrust into her constricted chest. But then the ringing fell silent. No one answered. She struggled to regain her composure, her trembling hand redialing once more. The phone rang again, its echo mocking her dwindling patience. She pressed the phone to her ear, silently pleading for Daniel to pick up, for this to be nothing more than a terrible misunderstanding. Yet once again the phone remained mute, leaving the room in a chilling silence. Anna hastily opened her messaging app, her fingers dancing frantically over the screen. "Daniel, I have just received a very strange message. Please call me back immediately. I need to talk to you." She pressed send, her eyes fixed on the screen in anxious anticipation. Seconds passed, yet the screen displayed nothing but the message she had just sent. She followed with another message. "Where are you? Why aren't you answering? I am so worried." Every minute stretched on, slow and interminable. Anna rose and began pacing around the room. Her gaze inadvertently fell upon her left hand, where the delicate ring still shimmered with haughty brilliance. Only an hour before, she had felt the warmth of Daniel's hand as he, trembling, fastened that ring onto her finger, whispering sweet promises that now seemed as distant and hollow as a cold lie. That ring was no longer a symbol of love. It had morphed into a cruel joke, a bitter mockery meant solely for her. Anna felt as though her chest were being squeezed by unseen forces. Her breath became labored, and tears welled in her eyes. No, Daniel could not have done this to her. How could he propose in the morning and then marry another that very evening? Surely this must be a mistake, a cruel prank of some sort. Yet deep in her heart, Anna knew the undeniable truth was real. She stared fixedly at the phone screen, fragile hope clinging to her that Daniel's reply might appear, yet the screen remained empty and unfeeling. She dashed to the door of her room, quickly donning a thin jacket, and raced down the stairs as fast as her legs could carry her. She hailed a taxi with a frantic wave as one slowly glided by. The taxi halted at the roadside. She opened the door and stepped in, her breath still heavy with urgency. "Majestic Hotel, hurry please," she implored in a trembling, hurried voice. The taxi driver glanced into the rearview mirror, noticing the unmistakable distress of the young woman. Without further inquiry, he pressed the accelerator and sped along the bustling street. Inside the taxi, Anna gripped her hands together tightly, her eyes vacant as they gazed out the window. Familiar streets blurred past, but she felt nothing anymore. In that moment, only Daniel's image filled her mind, along with the words he had spoken when he knelt to propose. He had vowed to love her forever, promising always to stand by her no matter what. Yet those promises now rang hollow and deceitful. The taxi stopped before the hotel. Anna paid hastily and dashed out of the car, nearly running into the building. Inside, the hotel overflowed with joyful chatter, sparkling lights, and exquisitely arranged fresh flowers. All these sights only deepened the sense of loneliness and despair in Anna's heart. She stood frozen in the grand lobby, her eyes searching desperately for a familiar face. Her heart pounded as she noticed the wedding reception being set up. Waiters hurried back and forth, yet it seemed no one acknowledged her presence. Anna knew she needed to confront Daniel. She needed him to explain everything. No matter how brutal the truth, she had to hear it from his own lips. She longed to look him in the eye, to see if the man she had once trusted still held any sincerity. And if everything were indeed true, she would rather tear everything apart with her own hands than silently endure such excruciating betrayal. Taking a deep breath, Anna gathered the last remnants of her courage and strode toward the wedding hall. Each step echoed on the cold marble floor, like a knife plunging into her heart. But Anna did not stop. She knew that from that moment onward, her life would never be the same again. She arrived at the hotel. The wedding hall was resplendent, adorned with a profusion of lights and blossoms. Clusters of crystal chandeliers swayed gracefully, reflecting their gentle luminescence upon every meticulously arranged white and pale purple rose. The space overflowed with the sounds of lively laughter, mellifluous music, and joyful congratulatory cheers from the radiant, smiling guests. Everyone was dressed in their finest attire, flowing long dresses in every hue, elegant and sophisticated suits, all exuding an air of effortless joy, unaware that just a few hours earlier, the very man now about to step into the altar had knelt before another woman, proposing with the most sincere words of love. Anna stepped across the threshold, her eyes darting rapidly around the grand hall, her heart pounding, her breath coming in quick, staggered bursts. All the merry sounds and vivid images blurred before her, transforming into dazzling, ephemeral spots of light in her mind. Yet, no matter what, her gaze fixed upon one singular figure, Daniel. He stood there at the altar, calm, confident, and debonair in a stately black suit, his perfect silver tie neatly arranged beneath a crisp white shirt. He smiled, a smile that was relaxed and radiant. But that smile was not for her. Right beside him, in plain view, was another woman, a woman draped in a pristine white wedding gown, more elaborate and resplendent than anything Anna had ever imagined for her own wedding. Sophia. That woman smiled happily, her eyes aglow with joy and pride. Sophia stood very close to Daniel, their hands interlaced, as if they had belonged together for an eternity, as if no other existence had ever interposed between them. Anna felt her mind spin, her heart thundering in her chest like a relentless drumbeat that rendered her dizzy. Her legs suddenly quavered, frail as if they might buckle at any moment. She drew in a deep, steadying breath, attempting to reclaim the last vestiges of strength within her, but it was futile. She could not fathom what was unfolding before her eyes. How could Daniel do this to her? Only this morning, she had felt the warmth of his hand as it clasped hers. She had seen the sincerity and the slight bewilderment on his face as he proposed. She remembered every word, every sentence, every syllable he had uttered, so clear and genuine that she could not have harbored the slightest doubt. She had trusted him completely, believed with absolute certainty that at last all those days of waiting and lonely, weary nights of hope had been repaid. But now, at this very moment, he stood there ready to wed another woman, a woman who was not her. Why? The question rang in her mind like a sour, painful bell. How could he propose to her in the morning and then marry someone else by the evening? Anna felt as though her chest were being constricted by unseen hands, unable to breathe, unable to believe what was happening. A choking sensation rose in her throat. Each breath became laborious and painful, like a dagger thrust repeatedly into her chest. Then, a strange strength compelled her forward. Her trembling leaden legs carried her onward. The sound of her high heels striking the cold marble floor resounded. Each determined step a resounding defiance that drowned out the music and the laughter all around. "Daniel!" Her voice rang out strong and decisive, overpowering every other sound in the vast room. Instantly, the hall fell into an absolute silence, every eye turning toward her in surprise, curiosity, and disbelief. Daniel turned as well. At last, his gaze fell upon her, the first time since she had entered. But in that gaze there was no trace of surprise, not even a hint of astonishment. There was not the slightest remorse or tinge of regret. There was only one thing present in his eyes, a coldness that Anna had never before witnessed in the man she had loved with all her heart. That look was like a basin of icy water, an invisible slap that rendered Anna utterly numb. She stood there, frozen, her eyes wide with pain and shock. The man she had cherished, the one who had vowed to dedicate his life to her, had now seemingly vanished, replaced by a stranger, an unfamiliar, unfeeling man. She stared at him, rendered speechless, her heart racing, her mind reeling in unbearable agony. Where was he? The man she loved had disappeared, replaced by a stranger she did not know, and now she realized she was utterly alone. Anna advanced step by determined step, her eyes locked unwaveringly onto Daniel's silhouette, allowing not a moment of hesitation to seep into her mind. As she drew near, her small yet furious hand clutched tightly at the cuff of Daniel's sleeve, pulling him as though she wished to drag him out of the cruel fantasy he had just created. "What are you doing?" Her voice trembled, each word catching in her throat. the visible anguish shining through tear-wet eyes. Daniel did not answer immediately. He stood motionless, his eyes empty, as if gazing into an indefinite void far beyond. After a long, suffocating silence that nearly stole Anna's breath, he slowly turned, his eyes still vacant and chillingly cold. His voice, barely audible, just enough for her to hear, whispered, "You shouldn't be here." Anna felt as if a jolt of icy electricity raced down her spine. She froze, her entire body stiffening at that simple yet haunting remark. 1 second, then another, each moment dragging on as she remained immobilized, save for the frantic beating of her heart, desperate to escape. "Shouldn't be here?" she repeated, her voice quivering with doubt and hurt, her eyes pleading. "Daniel, you proposed to me this morning. You promised me." Desperation laced her voice, rising a notch and drawing the attention of a few nearby guests. Their curious, pitying glances fell upon her, but she cared not for anyone except the man standing before her, the very man who had betrayed her so cruelly. Daniel remained silent, his eyes downcast, avoiding her gaze as if her stare burned him from within. Anna's pain deepened with the realization that he made no effort to explain, no attempt to alleviate the unbearable torment that consumed her. Her hand trembled, no longer able to feign strength. Tear by tear fell silently, each drop a testament to the searing betrayal that now ravaged her soul. "So what about me?" she cried out in exasperation, her voice breaking amidst the tears. "Why did you do this to me? Why me? I loved you. I trusted you." "Daniel!" For the first time, Daniel bowed his head low, as though trying desperately to conceal something inexpressible. When he finally spoke again, his voice was nearly exhausted, barely sufficient to deliver the grim truth just for her. "I had no other choice." Anna stood paralyzed. A profound pain gripped her heart, squeezing every ounce of hope from within. Confusion, despair, and the overwhelming sense of betrayal flooded her mind, leaving her utterly lost as to how to respond. She searched Daniel's face for the smallest sign of regret or lingering love, but all she saw was a cold detachment so ruthless it cut deeper than any knife. "No other choice?" she murmured, her voice fracturing under the weight of agony. "Then what of the love you vowed to me? The promises we once shared? Were they all nothing but lies?" Daniel said nothing. He avoided her gaze, turning instead toward the woman waiting in the distance. That silence confirmed the bitterest truth, extinguishing the faintest flicker of hope left within Anna's heart. She glanced around, catching the mixture of pity and curiosity in the eyes of those nearby. They regarded her as if she were a pitiable figure, a failure in this cruel game of love. She despised that feeling, despised herself for having been so naive, so utterly trusting of a man unworthy of her affection. With a heavy sigh, Anna released her grip on his sleeve, allowing the cold, empty space to engulf her whole being. She stepped back, her legs trembling as if ready to collapse at any moment. Daniel turned his back and walked away without a backward glance, leaving her standing alone amid the lavish hall, her heart slowly being crushed with every passing moment. Anna remained motionless, the surrounding sounds fading into a distant, hazy murmur, as if she were imprisoned within her own sorrow. Tear after tear fell, staining her cheeks, a clear, painful testament to the brutal betrayal she had just endured. And now, she realized, the man she had once loved so deeply, the one she had believed would always be by her side, was nothing more than a stranger, a cold, unfeeling stranger who had betrayed her without offering so much as an explanation. Anna laughed. A choked, bitter, heart-wrenching laugh that resonated silently amidst the lavish, opulent space, yet carried a cold and terrifying indifference. That laugh was like a bitter indictment, like a knife plunging straight into her heart. She could not believe that she had fallen into such a tragic fate. Had no other choice? Anna repeated Daniel's words, her voice trembling with anguish and seething pain. She looked at him with eyes full of despair, as if searching for even the smallest remnant of the man she had once loved so deeply. But Daniel remained silent. He did not reply, offered no explanation. He simply stood there, cold and distant, like a stranger who had never truly entered her life. Memories flashed relentlessly through Anna's mind, each segment clear and ruthless. Afternoons spent strolling hand in hand beneath a radiant sunset, candlelit dates where laughter mingled with the soft murmur of heartfelt promises. Every word he had spoken, every phrase, still echoed in her ears. But now they were nothing more than dust, shattered into 1,000 jagged fragments that stabbed into her heart. "I trusted you," Anna repeated once more, her voice nearly breaking. Tears had already escaped from the corners of her eyes, yet she did not wipe them away. She allowed them to fall, trailing down her pallid, exhausted face, a testament to her deep-seated hurt and disappointment. She could not bring herself to believe this was the truth. She had given him everything, her love, her trust, and all the hope for a beautiful future ahead. But now, everything seemed meaningless before his cold, ruthless words. At last, Daniel looked at her once again, but that gaze held no trace of affection. His eyes were empty, dispassionate to a frightening degree. An alien stare, as if he had never loved her, never shared anything with her. He regarded her calmly, then gently turned and walked away, leaving her behind. Anna felt an indescribable pain spreading through her body, a chill seeping into every cell. In that moment, she realized a truth she had long denied. She had never been his choice. She was nothing more than a temporary option, a stepping stone for him to ascend the ladder of power and wealth. Yet, painfully, she had loved him too much to see it. Her heart felt crushed by this brutal truth. Anna felt all strength drained from her, her legs trembling as though unable to support her any longer. All around, people seemed to murmur, whispering and bustling, yet she could hear nothing but the echo of her own anguished thoughts. She stood amidst the splendor, utterly lost and alone. Now she knew that the love and promises she had so blindly believed in were utterly meaningless. They were nothing but lies, sweet illusions spun by self-serving men like Daniel. She watched his receding figure, the man she once adored, walking away toward the beautiful bride waiting in the distance. Everything was clear before her eyes, yet Anna could not accept it. Finally, she closed her eyes, letting the tears flow unimpeded. It was all over. Nothing could salvage what had been lost. And in that instant, Anna understood most clearly, she would forever not be his choice. A voice rang out behind her, clear, sharp, and imbued with authority. "Why are you here?" She turned, feeling as though every second, every minute slowed to an eerie crawl. There stood Sophia, her eyes piercing like an invisible dagger, slicing through the delicate veneer of Anna's flesh, delving deep into the wounded soul within. Those eyes, that smile, that haughty, icy demeanor, everything made Anna feel dizzy, suffocated, as if the entire world around her were collapsing in an instant. Anna's mouth parted in astonishment. She had never looked at Sophia so intently before, never so clearly. But now, with the distance between them reduced to mere steps, she perceived what she had once unwittingly overlooked. A strange resemblance between them, the contours of their faces, the deep absorbing eyes, the graceful chins. Everything seemed to reflect her own image in a mirror distorted by bitterness and fate's inadvertence. Sophia. She was not merely a stranger. She was, in truth, her own flesh and blood. A sister. The very sister their mother had wept about on long, tear-streaked nights. The sister who had been swept away by a wealthy man. The same man their father had heartlessly abandoned their humble family in pursuit of power, fame, and riches. She was a part of the very blood of the man who had cast their lives into an abyss of despair. Anna trembled, her eyes brimming with tears, as a torrent of overwhelming emotions surged within her like a devastating tidal wave. Every childhood memory returned in vivid, painful detail. Memories of nights when her mother wept silently, of despairing laments over the betrayal by that man. She recalled the sorrowful, regretful look in her mother's eyes whenever she mentioned her firstborn daughter, who had been taken away by him, leaving her and Anna in perpetual loneliness, poverty, and endless suffering. "You know who I am, don't you?" Anna said, her voice quivering with a mix of anger and deep-seated pain. Sophia smiled faintly, a cold, bitter, and haughtily disdainful smile that was ever present on her flawless face. "Of course, Anna, I have always known who you are. But does that even matter?" Sophia's voice was soft yet heavy with meaning, each word etching itself painfully into Anna's bleeding heart. That nonchalant tone only deepened Anna's agony. "Why did you do this to me? You knew full well what the relationship between me and Daniel was, didn't you?" Anna bit her lip, desperately trying to stifle the tears that threatened to fall. Sophia stepped closer, a fleeting expression of sarcastic pity crossing her features. "You are so naive, Anna. Life has never been easy. I know you love Daniel, but Daniel is the only choice I have. Do you really think I would abandon everything I have painstakingly built just for a meaningless bit of your affection?" She tilted her head, regarding Anna as if savoring a cruel, twisted game. "And what about Daniel? Do you truly believe I have any feelings for him?" Anna whispered, her voice barely audible. Sophia shrugged ever so slightly, her eyes cold to the point of being terrifying. "Feelings? They are weak and useless. I need someone who can elevate me to the pinnacle of power, fame, and wealth. Daniel is that person. If you wish to blame someone, then blame fate for consigning you to failure from the start." Anna stood frozen, the pain intensifying with every word Sophia uttered, a sharp, cutting blow that drove a knife deeper into her heart. Every hope, every fragile illusion she had once harbored about love, about a happy future with Daniel, now lay utterly shattered. In their place stood a ruthless, unyielding reality that chilled her to the core. Anna drew a deep breath. The tears she could no longer contain began to cascade down her cheeks. "Are you truly my sister? How can you treat me like this?" she cried out. For a moment, Sophia's gaze drifted into the distance, but then it quickly returned to its customary cold, indifferent expression. "I am your sister, but only in name. We share the same father, but our lives are worlds apart. I cannot afford to pause, nor can I choose an uncertain future that would condemn me to the same suffering as our mother. I have chosen my own path, and Daniel is merely the tool that will expedite my journey." In that moment, Anna felt her entire world disintegrate into tiny fragments. Sophia had just dismissed their mother as a failure, and Daniel, the one she had loved above all, was nothing more than an emotionless instrument in her sister's eyes. Anna fell silent, bereft of the strength to utter another word. She turned away, her steps heavy, her heart cleaved by grief. She knew from that moment on, her life would never revert to what it once was. Anna said no more. She felt as if each breath were being strangled by some unseen hand. Her chest ached, every heartbeat echoing in her ears, powerful, yet utterly helpless. Everything before her faded into a dull haze, leaving only the silhouettes of Daniel and Sophia standing together at the altar. Her world had shattered into 1,000 jagged fragments, each shard piercing her already anguished heart. Slowly, Anna turned around. Every movement was a struggle, as if she were dragging her wounded, invisible, scars-laden body. Her legs trembled, seemingly unable to muster the strength for another step. Yet she kept walking, each slow, heavy step, the sound of her heels echoing coldly on the marble floor, merged with the dreadful silence of the guests who bore witness to this scene. She longed to run far away, but her body no longer obeyed her will. Her mind was choked by betrayal, pain, and despair. She knew she had to leave this place, to escape the alien gaze of Daniel, whose eyes were growing more distant with every passing moment. She could no longer bear another second of watching Daniel choose another, choosing a life without her. From behind her, the priest's voice rang out clearly, "Do you take her to be your wife?" This time, that sound struck her like a blade of ice, robbing her of the last fragile spark of hope. Anna did not pause to hear an answer. She already knew her fate. She had once hoped, had believed with every fiber that Daniel would choose her, that he would keep the sweet promise he uttered just that morning. But now, everything had dissolved like a soapy bubble, beautiful yet fleeting. Her footsteps continued to sound, blending with the rhythm of her shattered heart. She did not know how far she had walked, but it felt as though she had traversed a lifetime, curious, pitying. Even scornful glances trailed after her. Yet now, Anna cared for nothing. Everything had lost its meaning. Finally, she stepped out of the banquet hall. The sky outside was darkening, and the first raindrops began to fall, gently touching her skin as if attempting to soothe her pain, but only deepening her chill and loneliness. Anna looked up at the sky, letting the rain mingle with the tears streaming down her pale face. She stood motionless in the midst of the increasingly heavy downpour, her heart completely shattered, devoid of hope and strength to hold on to anything. She knew all too well. Daniel had chosen, and she had lost. She stepped out of the hotel. The sky was draped in a blanket of gray, heavy clouds amassed as if waiting for a command to burst forth. Anna walked slowly, step by weary step, away from the opulent building where the cruelest wedding she had ever witnessed had taken place. The sounds of music and laughter from within mingled with her footsteps, each note a cutting blow to her heart, leaving her aching and undone. Standing before the grand entrance of the hotel, she lifted her eyes to the heavens. At that moment, a single raindrop fell, cold and sharp as it kissed her skin. Then another, and soon, drop after drop fell faster, heavier, more fiercely, until they became a torrential downpour. She did not seek shelter, standing there as the rain soaked her, drenching her long hair and streaking her wan, weary face. Tears merged with the rain, so that no one could tell which were tears and which were raindrops. Anna simply stood, unmoving in the rain, as if she had lost all sensation. Time slipped by. She did not know how long she had stood there, only that her body grew colder by the minute, and her heart seemed to gradually turn to stone. When the throng of people began to pour out of the hotel, hurriedly dodging raindrops with umbrellas and coats, Anna remained still, seemingly no longer belonging to this world. A few curious glances were cast her way, but no one stopped. No one inquired. No one cared about the solitary woman standing alone in the rain. Slowly, Anna lifted her heavy legs and wandered aimlessly forward. The streets were now silent, save for the steady, cold, monotonous patter of rain. Each echoing step on the sodden pavement was a reminder of her internal agony. She walked on and on, not knowing where she was headed, no longer sure of what her next step should be. Her heart ached so deeply that it numbed her senses, leaving her mind hollow, too exhausted to conceive anything further. The images of Daniel at the altar, the chill in his eyes, the soft, almost imperceptible tone of his voice, repeated in her mind like a relentless film, brutal and unyielding. She could not fathom why this had happened to her. She had loved him so completely, trusted him without reserve, dreamed of a life filled with happiness by his side. But now, all those dreams were reduced to sharp, piercing fragments that stung her every time she recalled them. Anna walked on, lost in oblivion. The pain in her high-heeled shoes had long since faded into insignificance compared to the agony in her heart. She only wished to keep walking, ever farther, to a place where the shadow of Daniel and all memories of him might finally vanish, where she could perhaps forget and start anew. But she knew that was impossible. The memory of Daniel was too deeply ingrained. He had seeped into every breath, every heartbeat. How could she forget? How could she go on when the one she loved had betrayed her in the most ruthless way? The rain grew ever heavier, colder still, penetrating to the bone. Yet Anna did not stop. She walked on as if stopping would cause the pain to engulf her completely. She lost track of time, not knowing how many streets or intersections she had passed. Her legs grew weary, her body trembling with cold, yet she could not cease, until, by chance, her chilled hand reached up to brush her face, and she suddenly realized something horrifying. The ring, once the emblem of the promise of happiness that Daniel had bestowed upon her that morning, was no longer there. Anna froze in the middle of the street, her eyes staring in disbelief at the empty finger. She did not know where the ring had gone, or when it had ceased to adorn her finger. Her heart felt as if it were being crushed anew, more painful and despairing than ever. She burst into uncontrollable sobs right there on the street, tears mingling with the rain as her body shook violently. Daniel's promise, his sweet proposal. It all slipped away from her grasp like that cold, lifeless ring. She knew from that moment on, everything had truly ended. There was no salvation left for her. Anna fell to her knees on the cold, unforgiving pavement, completely alone and utterly broken. She knew that from this very moment, she would never be able to trust any promise again. Never again. Never believe in promises. In life, we often lean on promises to build our trust, to have a steadfast anchor for ourselves. Yet not every promise is kept. Sometimes, the most beautiful promises turn out to be the most deceitful. Daniel promised Anna a bright future, vowed that he would always be by her side, that she was the only one he loved and cherished. But that very promise became the sharpest weapon, a wound more painful than anything else. A sweet promise does not guarantee eternal existence. The world we live in can be crueler than we ever imagined. We give our trust, our hearts, based on words. Yet those words are far more fragile than we believe. Anna trusted Daniel completely, placing all her hopes and her future into his hands. In the end, the bitter truth was that his promise meant nothing. Promises only hold value when they are backed by real actions. A person can easily make vows, but do they have the courage, the love, to follow through? We must learn to be vigilant, to look at genuine deeds rather than merely listen to words. For a promise without action is but empty talk, devoid of any true worth. Love does not always conquer all. We often hear that love will conquer all, that love is the most miraculous power in the world. Yet in reality, life does not always unfold like a fairy tale. Anna and Daniel did love each other. This cannot be denied. Their love was sincere and genuine, at least from Anna's side, but in the end, that love was not strong enough to overcome the calculations, the interests, and the pragmatic choices at play. Sometimes love is too fragile before harsher forces. Money, power, status, societal pressure, or even the very selfishness of human nature. Daniel loved Anna, yet in the end, he still chose Sophia. Perhaps it was the pressure from family, material gain, or simply that he was never truly strong enough to fight for his love. This reminds us that no matter how grand love may be, it can still fail in the face of a harsh reality. Love alone is not always enough to keep two people together. Sometimes, the brutal truth is that love does not have the strength to overcome every trial. We must learn to see love with clear eyes, even if it hurts, to avoid deeper wounds in the future. Sometimes you must learn to let go, even when your heart refuses. Letting go is neither weakness nor surrender. It is the acceptance of reality, acknowledging that some things do not belong to us, no matter how hard we try to hold on. Letting go was the only way for Anna to protect herself from even deeper pain. She did not let go because her love had faded, but because she realized that her love could not keep someone who no longer wished to be by her side. In life, we all must learn to let go. Though it may be painful and our hearts may still long for what was lost, letting go will ease our burdens. When we let go, we grant ourselves the opportunity to start anew, to seek a happiness that is truly worthy. At last, Anna realized that true happiness does not lie in holding on to someone who no longer belongs to us, but in having the courage to move on and seek what is more deserving. If you enjoyed this story, Please like and subscribe to catch more tales that follow.